that were on the video, and they are not that little anymore, and their voices are not quite as high-pitched. But if the rest of the team could come up and join me. Most of you know that this is the team that went out to Tijuana, Mexico, to this place called The Mission. The campus there is called Rancho de sus Niños, which translates to His Kids Ranch. But we wanted to come back, and even though we've been back for a little while, a little over a week, we decided that it takes about that long, maybe even longer, to process everything that we learned or were impacted by. And so we just wanted to come back and share with you a little bit of our experiences. And I believe Jordan wrote something. So we're going to start with Jordan, and then with Ella, and then Tiffany. Soren, if you want to say something, you're free to do that. You don't have to. You can pass it on to Dad, and then Shelly and I. So here we go.
Okay, so Jordan's my older sister, and she couldn't be here today, but she wrote this. So my experience at Rancho was something that I would never have expected. Each day brought new experiences and challenges that I never would have pictured myself encountering before. There was so many people that I met on this trip that I really felt changed my life, but it was the kids that had the biggest impact on me. We were lucky enough to spend multiple days and multiple hours each day with the kids who lived at Rancho and the kids that they bussed in daily for their school and daycare. Getting to play with those kids was such a blessing. I cannot be grateful enough for the time I spent with them. Seeing the joy on everyone's face when they saw all of the volunteers who came just for them was something that I'll never forget. These kids and their stories taught me so much about God and His grace. They have had it harder in the first couple years of their lives than I will probably ever have in my lifetime. And yet they are so full of joy and hope and the love of Jesus. There were multiple times down at Rancho where I looked around and realized that that the moment I was living right there, and I looked around and realized that the moment I was living right there and then was a moment that I could happily live in forever. Not necessarily by living at Rancho, though I would love to go back, but just the love I felt from all the people around me and the absolute presence of the Holy Spirit that surrounded that place. Taking a week of my life and dedicating it to the kids and God was an amazing experience that I am so blessed to have been able to do. This trip has opened my eyes to the good that God can do through the few and for the many, and to the good that He can do, has done, and will continue to do through me. Yeah. So that was pretty good.
She got to phone hers in.
Yeah, she got to think about hers a lot. Write it out. I just wanted to talk about how amazing it was to just be at Rancho and simply serve people and not expect anything in return, but just love on people and just simply be there with people. And it's just so amazing because that's all that they ask for. And I don't know, it's pretty cool.
It was a great week. It was great to spend it with our family and with the Reyes family. Sorry. I think the biggest thing I came away with is when we went into town, pretty much everyone we encountered was so welcoming. We'd be in groups of 10 to probably 15 people, and they'd want everybody to come in their house, and they were these little tiny houses. So when we did our trash ministry in town, we went to this one lady's house, and she didn't have any trash, but she invited us in. And she just talked about how, it was a little house. They didn't have much, but her children were grown, and she talked about how she welcomed people into her home. There was a woman there with her small child. It wasn't her own, but they lived there. She told us that it was paradise to her. So that really, because it was not what I would picture as paradise, but it was her paradise, and it was pretty awesome. They didn't ask for anything from us. They just wanted us to feel welcome, and that was big. Do you have anything? And it's Soren's birthday.
Yes, it's a well-kept secret, not so well-kept anymore, but it's Soren's birthday today, so we said we'd really like him to be here, but he didn't have to say anything. Yeah. And he said just a minute ago, I'm not saying anything, so he actually under-promised and over-delivered, which is a good thing.
Happy birthday.
But I said, if you don't...
Panic attack today, so
fair enough. He doesn't want to have a panic attack, so that's good. So I said that he didn't have to say anything, but if he didn't, then I could say something about him. It was so amazing. Tiffany and I just decided, and with Ella's support and encouragement, that why not just make this a family trip? Not your typical family vacation to Mexico. Very little time spent with toes in the sand or drinks in the hand, but it was a magical week. Yeah, Ella is a seasoned veteran of Rancho. This was her third trip. And a couple of years ago, she drugged me along, not knowing what to expect, and it was way outside my comfort zone. And so leading up to this year, we got an opportunity to go, not as more of a collection of individuals, but as a family. And with two families, it was really a unique experience, and one I'll never forget. We had two that were super psyched about it. We had two that were a little nervous about it, and one that was dead set against it. But I was so impressed with the kids. They just, all three of them, cheerfully did the hard work with the shovel and the wheelbarrow and mixing mounds and mounds of concrete by hand to build a water diversion system to keep their houses from flooding during those heavy rains that they get sometimes. And it was a great project, and cheerfully went into the community and gathered trash from people for free, which is a way to say, here we are, we love you, we'd like to talk to you, and if you would like, we're happy to pray with you and give you a connection to church. And so my big takeaway from this week was connections, and I really felt that as a family, we got more and more deeply connected, and that was pretty awesome. We got connected with the Reyes family, and you all know, and now we know how amazing and awesome they are. And everybody at Rancho knows that too, because it was Old Home Week. They got to come back and they kept apologizing for having to interrupt conversations so they could go hug somebody that they hadn't seen in a year. And we were happy to let them do that, because just watching the loving embrace of that community on this family was wonderful. And they were so wonderful to us. And it's through children that we make connections sometimes. A lot of our best friends in town are friends that we met through our children's and their parents. And so when those kids would get up into Soren's lap and just love on him, and just to see the joy both ways, and the going into the preschool, and the kids would run up to him and grab his hand, and Ella's and Jordan's too. It was really cool to see how they just jumped in and participated fully in the whole experience. Yeah. So I'm not one to get scriptural, but I'm going to, and I warned Beto that if you put a microphone in my hand, I'm inclined to talk a lot, but I'll try to keep it brief. Give me the shepherd's crook if I talk too much. So for me, it was about connections, and Colossians 1:17 speaks to connections, and Paul, writing to the people of that town, said, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So we got connected more as a family. We got connected with this other great family too. And there were these connection groups where we got to go out into the community, and we formed a connection with a family. The family hosted us, and we packed at least a dozen people into this tiny, maybe 300 square foot apartment. And Hector, the father and the family, shared his story of redemption. And he and his now wife had a son, Hector Alejandro, and Then he made a poor decision, and he ended up in prison for 6.5 years, and came out reconnected with this woman, and they got married, and they have a beautiful baby daughter now, and he is hosting missions groups in his home, and the turnaround in his life and in his family is amazing, and they're a beautiful family. And we felt that strongly enough that we committed to sponsor his son, Hector Alejandro, so we have an ongoing connection now with Rancho, and it's just a pretty small way that we can show our commitment to that organization, and they do amazing things in the community, in the world, and serve some of the most neglected. While for our kids, it was a great opportunity to see how much they have materially in comparison to what those kids have. But what strikes me is that those kids have everything they need. They are fed and scrubbed and loved on, and their souls are nourished, and they have family and they have community. And so that connection is really strong. The deepest connection, or maybe the most significant connection that I felt like we made that week, was with a young man named Javier. So we were doing trailer ministry, which is where we set up in a park or playground in town, bring the trailer, set up chairs, set up tables with games and toys and activities for kids, and then there's a program at the end. But just before that, we go out into the community and try to get people to come out. And we went into this one house where a woman named Josie asked us in, and she told us that we were always and forever would be welcome in her home. It was a powerful connection. And Javier, I think, is her son, and a relatively young man. It was hard to tell, but he was even younger than I am, so quite young. And yet he had apparently been in some terrible accident, because he was missing one eye and some fingers off of one hand. And he could not speak. He could move his lips and communicate in some ways, but he had a tracheotomy tube in his neck, and he was on one of these hospital beds, which occupied about half of the great room in their home. And so Josie was caring for some young children there, maybe Hector's children, but Josie wanted us to pray with and for Hector, and we did that. Beto put me on the spot and asked me to pray, and I tried to do it in Spanish, and it was probably totally unintelligible, but we got through it, and I just felt the words coming to me from the Holy Spirit, and that was awesome. And then Javier communicated to Josie that he wanted a song, and a song in particular, and I don't know the song, it was something about hands in the air, but he mouthed all the words to that song, and then he indicated that he wanted me to hold his hand, and that was just a powerful connection. And when we were finished with the song, I saw this peace come over his face, and he yawned just like he could rest now, and it was a transformation that I don't know if anybody else noticed, but it was powerful to me. So those connections will continue, and maybe we'll get a chance to go back someday, but we really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with the Reyes family in this wonderful, amazing community, and we're glad to be back and share with all of you.
That was awesome. For me, it was like going back home, because we lived there for a year, so our kids definitely settled in really fast, and it was like running one way or the other and like going to where they're comfortable, so that was really cool. And it was nice. I had a week off of parenting because this family took care of my kids most of the week. They were all over all three of their kids, so that was really fun. It was like, let me know if that gets annoying, because I can parent again. It's cool. But the way our kids interacted with the kids who were there, like their friends they remembered, and they were like hugging people, and then we got to spend 3 days in the daycare with all the kids there, and our kids just integrated and just played. And so our kids don't really like to speak Spanish a lot, but they're really happy they know Spanish. when we go down there. And then when we came back, now they're like, do you know Spanish? No, yo sí, yo hablo español. Like, okay, now they're like really proud of it. And I think it's funny that we were there for a year and they didn't come back with that, but just being there a week, they come back and they're like, oh, that's really cool that I know that language. So that was really cool. Other things, I mean, hugs were amazing, and I didn't actually anticipate how many people we were gonna hug when we went back, and how many of the kids. Sorry. The kids who remembered, like, I knew they had a connection with Beto because Beto speaks Spanish, and like he engages with them a lot, but how many of them came up and hugged me and were like, oh my gosh, Shelly, and it's like, you remember me? That's so cool. So it was a really awesome week.
You're pretty.
So as you can hear, it was an amazing week, and I just want to remind you that anybody can come on these trips, and so we're probably a year out from the next one. So just mark it on your calendar, sometime in the summer for a week, and we can talk about money later. It just comes together. It's awesome. But for me, I just want to reciprocate. Hanging out with you guys was pretty amazing. We didn't get to spend that much time before we left, and then there was little times where we can actually get together and talk. But we do feel a connection that we need to continue with your family. And I was super impressed as well. I call it P90X, Mexican P90X, but it is just mixing concrete by hand. And here from the picture, it doesn't look like much, but you start out with 3 wheelbarrows of sand and 2 things of concrete, and then you build a little mountain, and there's a process. Once you add the gravel and the water, it becomes quite the workout. But there was no complaints. Everybody jumped in and helped wherever they could. And I like how that you called it a water diversion system, because I've just been calling it a gutter. But water diversion system sounds so much better. But they have a problem there on campus with flooding because the ground there is so hard. Thank you. My English is coming back. And the ground is so hard that when it rains, it just floods everything. And so the houses are on a downward slope, so creating these diversion systems prevents the house from getting flooded or flooded as much. And every square inch of this place that has concrete was mixed by hand. So it's pretty incredible to keep going back. And I don't know if Ella, if you encountered this, of like, oh, I poured that and I mixed that and I helped put up that. But it's pretty amazing to see how much it's grown. And we definitely really enjoyed pulling into campus. We were on the highway, and it was such a fun time for me to hear the kids like, oh, there's that, and there's that, and then there's the cross, and there's campus, and then we go through these gates, and we get to go through the tunnel. And there was this tunnel that goes under the overpass. And the kids just, every time, can we go to the tunnel? So it was really fun for them to go through the tunnel and be on campus. And they actually got to be in their school for one day for the afternoon. Once we left, keep in mind we have 4 kids, 1 who was in daycare and 3 who were in school. And once we left, then the classroom size dropped dramatically to like 2 or 3. And so they were very excited to have more students join them for that afternoon. But I do want to share a story with you that really impacted me. I've been learning a lot about my thought life and learning that not everything that I think comes from me or comes from God. Sometimes there are some thoughts that enter our minds that were put there as either lies or strategic statements from the enemy to divert us or to shame us or to just stop us in our tracks. And so the story I want to share with you is when we were there for the year, which is crazy to think that was almost 2 years ago. But Jeff mentioned this. You guys can go sit down if you want to. But yeah, I'm going to be a little while. But so every Thursday for the 9 months that we were there, 9 months as far as the school schedule goes, we would go out every Thursday into this community that once we were there this last week, I was like, we need to go back to this community because there's a certain amount of people that I want to go and I want to knock on their door and I want to revisit, reconnect, see how everything is doing. And we got to the neighborhood. And I got the opportunity to lead the group, which is really awesome. The person that was there to lead the group was told, Beto's going to lead it this week, so don't worry about it. Which is really cool for me, and we had a connection with that leader as well, so it wasn't like awkward or uncomfortable. But we went out, and we did encounter some of the people that I visited for the year. And then we went to the very last apartment complex to where it was just going to be, we didn't know if the person was going to be there or not, but I wanted to go check, because if they were there, I wanted to hug them. And we entered the complex, and I see Samuel. Samuel is a little boy who spends 95% of his time out on the streets. And I got to meet him because when we would go out into this neighborhood, there was a pizza place that was really good. And he would always just be hanging around there. And so I was talking to the pizza place owner, like, who is this kid? Is this your kid? And she's like, no, he just, every time I'm open, he comes and he hangs out from open to close. And once in a while, I'll feed him, a slice or two of pizza. And so he keeps coming back. And so then I got to know Samuel a little bit more, and I got involved in this story, and I wanted to get to know the parents. Who are the parents of this kid that just is out all the time? And so we, through a relationship, found out that she didn't live far from the pizza place. And I said, well, can I go visit? And it wasn't available at that time. But then I went back to Rancho, and I said, who can I talk to? I need to go make another visit to this house to just find out what's going on. And somebody from staff who does that type of a home visit to determine whether a kid's at risk or not came with me. We drove out together, and we actually got to see Mom and to meet Mom. And the environment was not the best environment, but there wasn't an element of risk or danger, and so there wasn't much that we could do. But we got to meet Maria. And the day that Maria and I met, I come in with my smile that I can't seem to get